Why were the samurai so incredibly strong? Clad in armor weighing over 40 pounds, they charged up mountain passes, pressed forward through hails of arrows, endured sword wounds that would drop any modern man, and still they advanced. Where we would collapse, they simply kept moving. They felt no fear. Pain could not stop them. The option to retreat had been erased from their minds entirely. But was that truly strength? Or had the age itself driven human beings to a place no person should ever have to go? This is the story of why the warriors of Japan were something beyond ordinary men, explored through the boundary where history ends and mystery begins. Chapter 1. Were the samurai even human? Every time someone revisits the old scripts of the Sengoku-era Japan, many feel uneasy. The behavior recorded in those pages is simply too far beyond the human. Men in 40-pound armor sprinting up mountain trails. Warriors standing on the battlefield after days without sleep and almost nothing to eat. Soldiers struck by arrows, cut open by blades, bleeding freely, and still pushing forward without breaking stride. Any one of those conditions would immobilize a modern person. The samurai accepted all of them as ordinary life. So the question must be asked, were they truly the same being as us? The painted battle scrolls and military chronicles of the era are filled with accounts that strain belief. A commander, already struck down, who reportedly killed several more enemies before finally falling. A mortally wounded warrior who, refusing to surrender his head to the enemy, summoned his last reserves of will and took his own life. Historians tend to dismiss such stories as exaggeration or invention. But here is the problem. Accounts like these appear far too consistently, across far too many places, to be explained away so easily. If they were all fabrications, why does the same impossible image repeat itself over and over across centuries of record? The answer lies in how these men were made. From the moment a samurai was born, his entire existence was oriented toward war. Playing was training. Growth was measured in martial progress. Children were exposed to fear before they had the chance to develop it, and to pain before they could learn to fear it. A human being raised inside that environment does not emerge with the same nervous system as someone raised in peace. And there was something else. The samurai did not treat death as something to be pushed away. Death was not an enemy to be defeated. It was simply the next thing that would happen, just a sequence of events that would inevitably come. That acceptance may have done something profound to the emotion of fear. It may have dulled it almost entirely. When fear is gone, how far can a person go? The samurai answered that question with their bodies. They did not become strong. As they grew older, age took away every other option. What this chapter has raised is only the doorway. In the next, we go deeper, into the physical reality of how the samurai body was built and what daily life actually did to the men who lived it. Chapter 2. How the samurai body was forged. To understand the extraordinary physical power of the warriors in Japan, you must first understand their daily life. A samurai did not suddenly become formidable on the battlefield. His body was engineered for war from the very beginning. The sons of samurai were placed in contact with weapons while they were still children. They swung wooden swords, learned to handle horses, and were scolded for falling. Crying was shameful. Pain was something you endured. There was no concept of protecting a child's developmental years. Quite the opposite. Pushing the young body hard was considered not cruelty but necessity. The result was a skeleton that grew dense, joints that remained supple, and muscles shaped not for visuals but for practical use. And crucially, the fitness the samurai developed was not explosive power. It was endurance. Not the ability to give everything in a single burst, but the capacity to keep moving for hours, for days. That quality was forged naturally through a life of marching on foot, carrying loads, and surviving nights in the open field. Diet played its part as well. Sengoku-era food was simple: rice, mixed grains, miso, dried fish. But it was, in fact, nutritionally balanced. There was no excess sugar, no surplus fat. The body stayed lean and responsive. Yet even all of this cannot fully explain what the records describe. The missing piece is pain. When modern people feel pain, they stop. The body sends a signal, and the mind obeys. But for the samurai, pain on the battlefield was not a warning. It was simply background noise. To stop because of a wound meant death. And so, through relentless repetition, something changed in the way their nervous systems processed that signal. Pain was no longer interpreted as danger. It was filed away and ignored. This means it was not only the body that had been transformed. The neural architecture itself had been restructured for war. And this leads to a deeply unsettling hypothesis. The samurai, without ever intending it, had become human beings with their limiters removed. Fear and pain no longer triggered the instinct to stop. In their place, a single instruction had been written into the body at the deepest level: keep moving forward. That may be the true explanation for men who ran in full armor, refused to fall after being wounded, and fought until there was simply nothing left. In the next chapter, we turn to something even darker: the battlefield itself and what it did to the mind of every man who entered it. Chapter 3: How the battlefield broke men into something else. No matter how perfectly conditioned the body, no human being is immune to fear. And yet, the samurai of the Sengoku period charged into near certain death in formation, again and again, without breaking. To understand how, you have to understand what a battlefield actually was. It was a place completely severed from ordinary reality. War drums hammered without stopping. Conch shell horns tore through the air. The combined roar of thousands of voices merged into something that felt less like sound and more like physical force. Banners snapped in the wind. The smell of blood and sweat and smoke pressed in from every direction. This environment did something to the human mind. It systematically dismantled rational thought. What it produced was, in modern terms, something close to a trance state, not sought deliberately, but generated by the chaos itself. Fear, as any soldier will tell you, is most powerful when you are alone. On the battlefield, no one was alone. Every man around you was moving in the same direction. To fall back was cowardice. To hesitate was betrayal. The choice to advance was not really a choice at all. It was the only option left open. Consumed by the collective momentum, the individual warrior ceased to exist as an individual. The question was no longer whether he might die. It became simply whether the body could still move. And in that moment, human beings are capable of things that should not be possible. The military chronicles record them plainly. Men stepping over the bodies of fallen comrades in order to advance forward. Warriors ignoring their own wounds to cut into the enemy formation. One account describes a soldier continuing to walk forward for several steps after his head had been chopped. The battlefield had made them, and the battlefield had unmade them. Calling them strong is easy, but beneath that strength was a human being who had been driven somewhere from which there was no return. In the next chapter, we examine the force that bound all of this together, the weight of a name, and the stories that outlived the men who earned them. Chapter 4, Heavier Than Life, The Curse of Name and Legacy. So the samurai chose death over retreat, not because they were unafraid of dying, but because they were more afraid of what survival at the cost of honor would cost everyone they loved. There are so many historical records of samurai who held their ground in situations where the outcome was not in question. They knew they could not win. They held anyway. Because a death like that was not wasted. A death like that was told. Loyalty was recorded. A magnificent final stand became a story, and stories did not die. The samurai understood something, perhaps without ever putting it into words. Every person dies. What matters is how that death was. So these warriors most likely were not fighting to live. They may have been fighting to be remembered, to become a character in a story that would outlast them. That ambition, to be spoken of, to endure in legend, may have been a more powerful force than anything physical. The tradition of seppuku, or perhaps more widely known by the term harakiri, exists on the same line. To die by one's own hand rather than surrender. To complete one's value through the act of offering up one's life. The samurai did not push themselves towards strength. They simply could not afford to show weakness. In the final chapter, we bring all of these together and ask the question that has been waiting from the beginning. Were the samurai truly the greatest warriors? And if so, what does that actually mean? Final chapter. Were the samurai the greatest warriors? The edge of human limits. Everything we have examined points to the same conclusion. The strength of the samurai was not a matter of muscle or bravery. It was an entire system, a civilization built around the production of a particular kind of human being. A body shaped from childhood for nothing but war. A mind conditioned to receive pain and fear as ordinary sensation. The collective madness of the battlefield, which dissolved the individual and replaced him with something that could not stop. And a value system in which the loss of one's name was a fate more terrifying than death itself. When all of these forces converged in a single person, the result was something that looked, to everyone who witnessed it, like a being beyond human. But one question remains. Were they happy? Historical accounts examining them carefully show something troubling. Men who stopped laughing after too many battles. Warriors who could speak of nothing but war. Samurai who lost their place in peacetime and returned to the battlefield, not because they were ordered to, but because it was the only place where they felt real. In becoming what the age demanded, they surrendered something that cannot be recovered. Ordinary feeling. Ordinary life. We live in a world where survival is considered wisdom, not weakness. Where retreating from danger is a reasonable choice. Where pain is something we have the right to avoid. A modern person placed on a Sengoku battlefield would not fight the same way. Not because they are lesser, but because they hold fundamentally different things to be worth protecting. The samurai did not choose to become what they were. The age chose for them. It stripped away every other option and left only one path. And they walked that path to the very end. That is why history calls them the greatest warriors. But is that a legacy to admire? Or is it a record of what happens to human beings when everything except violence is taken from them? A warning that should never be repeated. If you found this journey through history compelling, your likes and subscriptions mean everything. They're what allow stories like this one to keep being told.